Díadí Vacharja, the Farana Falcha Rove, Hig FleadhFest Cura, Fiahin. This is the Derry City programme, and I am delighted to be joined by renowned musician, scholar, performer, linguist, and the list is not exhaustive, good friend Marcus O'Mara, who you're very welcome, Marcus.
Thank you very much, Siobhan.
Marcus, can you tell us about your current involvement in Comhaltas in Derry City?
Absolutely. I've been delighted to have been asked by the branch here in Ballynagallach in Derry, which is right beside where I live, to help out with online classes and to participate in the sessions as well too. And basically it's providing, in my opinion, it's doing a great job providing cohesion, and that's what Comhaltas does, is providing cohesion right throughout the country. So when I'm travelling around, as I have been from the first Fleadh I went to back in Ennis when I was 16, with Leslie Bingham from Cumber and County Down and all the boys from Belfast, etc. You meet people and you're getting to know people, you establish relationships, and that's what Comhaltas is doing. It's providing a great way for children, the Fleadh Cheoil, and particularly in the days of the Fleadh Cheoil, music and enjoyment and a bit of fun and a bit of family entertainment as well too. And I enjoy coming here with my own family.
Brilliant, and you've touched upon the Fleadh Cheoil there, and obviously that was a very significant thing for Derry City and County Derry to host Fleadh Cheoil here in 2013, but it was very significant for you personally in that you were awarded the highest possible honour from Comhaltas, the Ardolu Award, and maybe you would tell us a bit about what that meant for you.
That meant an awful lot. Because, as I said, when I accepted the award, it wasn't just on behalf of myself, but on the people that made me the cups of tea up and down the country and gave me the sandwiches and the dinners and the welcome, right down from Sligo and County Clare and Galway and Donegal, and right throughout Ulster, all the 4 provinces. And, to have followed in the footsteps of Sean O'Shea and Micheál O'Sullivan and Tomás O'Cannon and Anton McGowan and people like that, Daithí Huithne, just fantastic people who are renowned musicians, etc. But there are other people that got recognition that year. Your father as well too, who got a Cunrody Award, and Mick O'Connor from London. People like that, people I've known for years. And Comhaltas, rightly so, did recognise certain people. And the only difference between myself and the others is that I had done research and printed papers and given lectures and things like that. But as a musician, as a person on the ground, there were an awful lot of other people who could easily have got that particular award. But it was lovely because the Lord Mayor of Sligo and the chairman of Sligo Council was up as well, where my mother's people came from, and because Sligo was getting it the next year, the Fleadh, and it moves around. For people that don't know, it goes from place to place. And it was lovely. There were people there at that particular Fleadh in Derry. We were welcoming people. We were sitting down outside the City Hall, at the Town Hall, playing with people from London and people from Cavan, Jimmy Murphy, Anton McGowan, and Mick O'Connor, and then all the ones from Derry are all playing. The County Derry ones were up as well, and it was incredible. That was a Fleadh Cheoil, the real McCoy. There was no flashing lights, no bells and whistles going. It was pure music, and that's, for me, that's always what a Fleadh Cheoil has been, and that's what I get here, which is lovely.
Well, I heartily agree with you, and I hope very much that we get back to the pure music and the family fun in the not too distant future. So, gura míle mai agat, Marcus.
Míle fáilte rót is siúin agus gnéirí leat leis an chóidead an chláir, gura mai agat.
And now I'm joined by renowned piper Brian Stafford. Brian, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a bit about the Comhaltas scene in Derry City around the 70s?
Well, I suppose early to mid-70s. I was in my very early teens at the time, just really getting interested in Irish music. So at that time, I didn't really know a whole lot about Comhaltas or what was going on. I just knew that this was something I wanted to pursue, musically speaking. And I suppose my first point of contact at the time would have been Paddy Rice in his record shop on Carlisle Road in Quaver Records. And I very quickly discovered that Quaver was the regular meeting point for anyone interested in traditional music, and obviously that's where you would get your vinyl back in the day and so on. And then of course I gradually came to realise that Paddy was also the major organiser of events in the area. So it was through that I came to know about the whole Comhaltas ethos and what was going on musically in the region, started to find out where sessions were and so on. Okay. And every time I'd managed to save up my fiver, I'd be in for the next album. So,
you know, not many people watching this programme, Brian, might know that there is a very strong affiliation between Derry City and the piping tradition. And maybe you could tell us a bit about that tradition in the city and how you came to choose the pipes as your instrument.
Okay, well, I'd always liked the sound of piping in general. You know, any kind of bagpipe I basically found interesting. I liked the sound of the reeds and the drones together. And then the first time I actually heard uilleann pipes played, strangely enough, was on Roy Castle's Record Breakers programme back in the early 70s. And I think it was Finbar Fury playing. And I thought, right, those are great, I'm going to play them. And a while later, I discovered really that, I mean, I'd no idea where you got the instrument or how you would go about getting it. And then I discovered my father worked with Finbar McLaughlin's wife, and I discovered Finbar, who was a pipe maker, literally living about 300 yards down the road from me. That was before he moved to where he lives now. So I went down to see Finbar and eventually got a practice set off in, you know, bellow bag and chanter. And then through that, I gradually discovered that there was quite a strong tradition of piping already in the town. So I got very friendly with Joe McHugh. And obviously Joe McLaughlin and Dermot McLaughlin were very active on the scene. Dermot played a bit of pipes at the time as well, although most people would know him as a fiddle player, but I remember Dermot occasionally playing pipes. And then there's John McCarran was on the scene as well. His brother Morris, you might know, as a baron player. So I started to gradually integrate into the whole thing, and then you know, with Finbar sort of making pipes and that tended to draw people in. So you started to get a much wider knowledge of piping traditions in the area. And I remember one time Finbar and myself counted up how many pipers there were in the general area, and I think we came to about a dozen or so.
That's
which
amazing.
At that time, I mean, when I first got interested, there might only have been about 100 people in the world playing the instrument. You know,
that's fantastic.
So.
And you touched upon the, you know, becoming integrated into the traditional Irish music scene and the piping scene, and you know, Comhaltas played a role in that as well.
Yeah.
And would you say that the ethos of Comhaltas today is much the same as the ethos when you first joined the organisation?
In the very early days, I suppose. The circle I moved within was very limited, so I can probably only speak for how things were in Derry at the time, but you know, certainly that was a very inclusive, kind of welcoming, basically a bunch of enthusiasts. But I think, like all organisations, they develop over time. So, for instance, to my mind, the ethos when we had the All-Ireland Fleadh in 2013 was very much broader, perhaps, than it was in the early days when I first encountered it, you know, because obviously, you know, things develop over time, more kind of comes within the, I suppose, the remit, as it were, you know, so I see it as a broadening organisation, and, you know, obviously, I think as time goes on, things become more sophisticated as well. You know, when you see how Scoil Egsha, for example, is organised nowadays compared to, it was a fairly low key thing in the 70s. So You know, in terms of scope of what it's doing, I think it has developed massively, but it's always been at its core a bunch of enthusiasts, I think.
I would agree with that. And Brian, thank you very much for sharing your insight into the piping tradition in Derry City, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Siobhan.
It's a remarkable statistic, but in its 60-year history, Fleadh Cheoil has been hosted by no less than 22 different towns across the country.
Now the Fleadh's making its own bit of history by coming north of the border for the very first time to the beautiful and historical city of Derry. Traditional music followers from the northern counties who've been great supporters of the Fleadh now find themselves paying host to thousands of visitors from all over the world.
Yeah, I'm having a good time since we came to Derry. A lot of crowds coming in, a lot of nice buildings. Everybody seems to be enjoying themselves in Derry, so looking forward to the Fleadh now this evening.
The thing I like the most about the Fleadh is that there's just music going on everywhere, on the streets and pubs, and just a great atmosphere. Yeah, I think I definitely would recommend for people to come to Derry. It's beautiful architecture and people are friendly.
Tonight we're going to have a wander around Derry, just see what's on the streets and just check out what's happening in the Fleadh. Yeah, definitely come back again. I'd like to come back to Derry. It's so close to Donegal and looks like a nice city, so yeah, I'll definitely be back in Derry.
Yeah, definitely for shopping maybe. I'll come back.
It's a nice city, good crack, a lot of people around the place, so yeah, come to Derry.
And now I'd like to welcome Angela Harkin, PRO of the County Derry Board of Comhaltas Units and PRO for my own branch, CCE Ballinagellia. You're very welcome, Angela. Could you tell us how you became involved in Comhaltas?
I became involved in Comhaltas at probably a lot later age than most people. It was through my son, Rory. Rory got very big into Comhaltas during the Fleadh Cheoil 2013. He just was intrigued by all the musicians. He loved going out in the evening and watching, and his whole thing was, I need to get involved, I need to play an instrument. Didn't care what kind of an instrument, as long as it was an instrument. So because of that, Rory started off doing the tin whistle. Went from there, and then in 2016, Rory became a member of CCE Ballinagellia whenever it was founded, and hasn't looked back. Just the friendships and the people that he has got to know and the instruments that he's got to learn from it has been absolutely amazing.
That's brilliant. And we've touched upon already that you joined Fleadh Ballinagellia, which is obviously my own branch too. So I'm delighted to have you today because it's just like a chat with a friend, really. But could you tell us, for anybody who's not au fait with Ballinagellia, tell us a bit about the branch.
Okay, Ballinagellia is based in the Skeg area of the city. All our classes, sessions, so on, is all held at Studio 2. Fantastic facilities they have, and we're just privileged to actually be involved with such a great group of people. It's like a family, more so than music lessons.
That is a word that has come up quite a bit today, is the family sort of ethos of Comhaltas and the friendships, like you've said, that have been forged from joining Comhaltas. So I would definitely agree with you that Ballinagellia is sort of like a family orientated and very family friendly kind of organisation. So it's great for promoting the music, but also for the youngsters.
For the youngsters and for friendships, both for the youngsters and for the adults.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously without the youngsters, they're the ones that's going to be carrying on with the music whenever we're well past music.
Well, I hope we've a wee bit to go yet, Angela. But could you maybe describe then some of the highlight events for you since joining in 2016? What have been some of the highlight Comhaltas events that you've been involved in Fleadh Ballinagellia?
God, we've been so lucky, so we have to be fair. We had Keeley House came twice. Hosted one of their events in Studio 2, which was fantastic because it was quite a small number. And then we had a bigger event at one of the local schools, which was absolutely amazing as well. Just the performances, the musicians, just everything about it was absolutely fantastic. And for CC Ballinagellia, the only Derry branch to be able to host it on 2 occasions was a fantastic achievement, and it was a great honour.
And you were heavily involved as well in the organisation of the County Derry Fleadh, which came.
That's right. County Derry Fleadh again was probably the first big event that CC Ballinagalla had hosted, and again it was an absolute privilege and an honour because the amount of people that we met, from children from like 4 or 5 years old right up to 70, 75-year-old was fantastic. We had a great weekend with all the different competitions, and it was great just to watch the children perform and see how well that they'd come on throughout the year.
Definitely, and I mean that was in 2019, and then again the committee had to adapt in 2020 with COVID and still managed to put out a county fleadh, albeit online this time.
That's right.
So you've been really busy.
It has been very busy. COVID obviously put a lot of dampeners on a whole lot of things, but as you say, we were very lucky and again privileged that we were able to do the fleadh online. Hopefully things will change and we'll be able to come back.
And thanks a million for joining me, Angela, and I hope that we can get back to some semblance of normality at branch level soon.
Thank you.
And now we have a group of Derry City-based musicians, Marcus O'Murahu on concert flute, Josie Nugent on the fiddle, and Brian Stafford on the uilleann pipes, giving us a set of hop jigs, The Rocky Road to Dublin and The Butterfly. Next up, we have County Derry Chairman and Chairman of Fleadh Ballinagalla, lifelong Comhaltas member, and definitely the reason why I am such a traditional Irish arts enthusiast, because he just so happens to be my father, Brendan Malloy. Brendan, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Brendan, can you tell us about Comhaltas in Derry City and how it has evolved since you first joined?
Well, I'm involved in Comhaltas for more years than I care to remember or say publicly. But when I go back to the days of Comhaltas when I joined when I was a boy, Comhaltas was very different. They were a cohort of die-hard cultural activists. And apart from those activists, you know, it may not have been fashionable or, you know, to be involved in the Irish arts. The troubles were going on and there were a lot of things happening. But I remember back in Bridge Street, which was an old school where Fleadh Shopping Centre is, for people that may not know where that is. And you would have had the likes of Paddy Rice, Father Jack Gallagher, you know, the late Brenton Saunders, Paddy O'Meanan, and Jimbo Feeney. These people all were very given of their time. They promoted and encouraged and nurtured us. And that ethos was very strong there back in the early 70s. And you move on later on into the 80s and early 90s, you come across saying the late fine musician, fiddler, the late Keevin O'Doherty, you know, and George Kilkey, Dennis Heaney, run Ceilidh bands, run things. So all those people carried the tradition back in the early days, and it moved on and people evolved with it. Back in today to here where we're so blessed to be in Studio 2 where Creeve Ballinagalla is. I mean, back in the day we could have never imagined anything like this, you know, so it has evolved from very, you know, making great steps all together.
Mm-hmm. And how do you keep an organisation like Comhaltas then thriving in your area?
Well, I would say that it's more we than I. But I mean, there's a lot of very dedicated people, and nothing happens with one person. That, you know, we have great tutors like yourself, Siobhan, Michael and Karen and Kieran, who are all very willing to give their times and their talent. We have great parents. You know, children don't come places on their own. Parents have to bring them. But I think with the committee and the group of parents we have, the people here at Studio 2, Ollie Green, you know, it's a big family. And I'm sure you'll hear it throughout these programmes. Comhaltas is a family, and that's what happens. People work together. And as I say, it's because of all those people and what those people do in the organising committees make things happen and make it interesting that people want to be part of.
Mm-hmm. So, Brendan, can you tell us about some of you've mentioned some individuals there, you know, that were very prominent on the traditional Irish music scene in Derry City. And could you tell us a bit more then about the branches of Comhaltas that were in Derry City throughout the years?
Well, suppose if you go back to when I started, the only branch probably would have been the Derry City branch of Comhaltas, which covered everything, you know, the musical instruments and a lot of instruments for the time and a bit of dancing. And then as time progressed, there would have been a branch called Greenan, which would have had, you know, a very famous singer, the late Paddy Harkin. Sal Litchfield would have returned from Birmingham and be part of that branch. Brady MacDonald and Pat Convery, which would have, this branch, you know, evolved over the years and people grew in. Their musicians became their Ceilidh band and their members become their Ceilidh dancers, and they would have run a Ceilidh every week with in branch, and that was a great social thing. Then you would have had, you know, gone back into the 80s, 90s, you know, the Craigan branch, you know, which would have been another famous singer, Vincent Strunks. But you would have had, like, the Carlins, a very famous musical family, Siobhan, I don't have to tell you, would have Kieran and Stephen and Karen are all renowned musicians in their own right. And then you would have had the late Betty and Wooly Kern were great fountain members and would have been heavily involved. You know, these people would have been in Congress in America and Congress in Dublin. And then you go up to date, you know, there were some branches that would have come up around the time of Fleadh Cheoil and the Hearn and evolved. But then come up to 2016, our own branch, Creeve Ballinagalla. And, you know, Creeve Ballinagalla is there now, holding the flag and leading. We have singing, we have adult classes, we're promoting the language and the music classes. So please God, we're looking forward to the dreaded COVID leaving us and getting back to classes in person. And you know, that's a brief background of the branches in the city. So they're a great tradition of Comhaltas in Derry City.
Mm-hmm. And could you describe some of the highlight events that Derry City coordinated over the years, and who were the key people involved?
Well, there's some great memories, you know. Thinking back, I remember the first Fleadh coming to the city. My God, I was young. I was like a youngster waiting for Santa. It was like Christmas, that's how big it was, and that's how enthused everybody was about it. Like, and as I say, you would have had the Paddy Rices, you know, the people from South Derry, the Anna Francie Brawleys, you know. Then you go on to, as you get older and Fleadh's out in the county, you know, the people like Manus McShane, again, Colin Murray and Bernie Murray out in Ballinascreen. Great people, great Gaels, and great supporters of the tradition, right up through. You heard about, I spoke about Paddy Rice here. Paddy Rice brought concerts and musicians to this town when no other artists were coming, and they were traditional. And I mean, as a young person and a young boy then, we were trad heads. We wanted to go. We never seemed to get a ticket or have a ticket, but we always seemed to be at the concerts, which was brilliant. And then you go on to, you know, even when CC Balnagallia brought the first Fleadh into the city, was great for the branch, the new branch that had formed in 2016. But the highlight of any traditional event in this city has to be 2013, Fleadh Cheoil na hÉireann. Fleadh Cheoil na hÉireann was massive for this city, it was massive for the county. And it was massive for a number of reasons. It gave not only people in Derry, but across the country, great hope. And, you know, it was a statement, and a statement of intent. And there are a lot of people to be congratulated for that. A lot of people done great work to make this happen. You know, and it would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Laros O'Muraku and the Art Cordia, because they really stood behind us. It was difficult times, and not everybody was for it for whatever reason, but we overcome those particular blips and look at the legacy it has left. Look at here today, and Derry City and Derry County, the music is thriving and the traditional arts are thriving for that.
Well, I would tend to agree with you there that the traditional arts certainly are thriving in the city and beyond, and I look forward to getting back to work at the branch level. And thanks a million for joining us, Brendan.
Very welcome. Thank you, Siobhan.
That's us now, folks. Gur a míle maith agah. Thank you for joining us. Slán.